For 300,000 years, no human being had ever spent a single night completely alone. Not one. Sleep, sex, birth, illness, even death. All of it happened in the same fire-lit room, in front of everyone. The idea of a door you can close on the rest of the world simply did not exist.
In most hunter-gatherer bands, shelters held 10, 20, sometimes 40 people under one roof of hide or thatch. There were no internal walls because there was nothing to separate. No bedroom, no bathroom, no study. Everyone ate, argued, mourned, and mated within arm's reach of everyone else. Anthropologists studying groups like the Kungsan of the Kalahari found that solitude wasn't just rare, it was suspicious. A person who wandered off alone too often was assumed to be sick, cursed, or planning something dangerous. Being watched wasn't an invasion. It was proof you belonged. Even birth, the most intimate event a body can go through, was rarely private. Women in many traditional societies gave birth surrounded by mothers, sisters, and midwives, sometimes with the whole camp within earshot. Silence during labor wasn't valued. Help was. Sex, too, happened with less concealment than we'd assume. In many longhouses and communal dwellings, couples had almost no acoustic or visual separation from siblings, parents, or neighbors. What we now call privacy would have looked to them like isolation, the kind reserved for outcasts or the dying. Even going to the toilet was often a shared, unremarkable act. Roman public latrines seated dozens of people side by side, mid-conversation, with no partitions at all. There was no shame script yet written for the body. That came later, and it came slowly. The medieval European peasant house makes the point even clearer. One room, one fire, a family of 6 or 8, plus chickens, a pig, maybe a cow, all sheltering under the same low roof through winter. There was nowhere to go to be unseen, so no one expected to be. Even nobility didn't get much more. In medieval castles, lords and ladies often slept in a great hall, alongside servants, guards, and guests. Everyone rolled up in blankets on the floor when the fire died down. A private bedroom, reserved for one person's exclusive use, was not yet a feature of even the richest lives. Beds themselves were communal furniture, not personal ones. Travelers at inns routinely shared a single bed with total strangers, sometimes 3 or 4 to a mattress, because that was simply how a bed was used. The notion that a bed belonged to one body, and one body only, hadn't been invented. Servants in wealthy households often slept on trundle beds at the foot of their master's bed or on the floor just outside the door, literally there to be summoned in the night. There was no expectation that even the wealthy deserved to be unwatched while they slept. So where did the idea of an inner, hidden self even come from? Some historians point to the confessional booth, introduced by the Catholic Church in the 16th century. For the first time, a person could speak thoughts into a small, enclosed space meant for exactly one voice, unheard by anyone but a priest. That tiny wooden box was, for a lot of ordinary people, the first architecture ever built around the concept of a private inner life. Before it, there wasn't really a widespread cultural sense that your thoughts belonged only to you. The confessional didn't just hear secrets. It helped invent the idea that a person could have any. Diaries followed a similar arc. Personal, locked, written for an audience of exactly one. They only became common among ordinary people in the 17th and 18th centuries. Before that, writing was almost always meant to be read aloud, shared, copied, or sent. Writing purely for yourself, about yourself, was a strange new habit. The hallway is another invention people rarely think about, but it changed everything.
Before hallways existed, most houses were built as a chain of rooms you walked straight through. One room led into the next, and the next, with no passage around them. To reach the back bedroom, you walked through every other room in the house.
That meant a servant fetching firewood, a child running to the kitchen, or a guest looking for the toilet. All had to pass directly through your bedroom to get anywhere else. There was no way to avoid being seen, mid-dress, mid-sleep, mid-anything. Privacy was structurally impossible. The building itself wouldn't allow it.
The corridor, which started appearing widely in wealthy European homes in the 1600s and 1700s, solved that by letting people walk around rooms instead of through them. For the first time, a bedroom could be a true dead end, a room only one person needed to enter. That single architectural shift is arguably where the private bedroom, as we know it, was born.
But this new privacy was expensive, and it stayed expensive for a long time. Corridors, extra rooms, individual doors, all of it required space, and space cost money. For centuries, private rooms were a luxury item, like silk or imported spice, available only to the households that could afford to waste square footage on solitude.
Meanwhile, the poor kept living the old way, just in newer buildings. Industrial-era tenements in cities like London, New York, and Manchester packed entire families into a single room again, sometimes with boarders renting floor space to sleep on at night. The industrial age didn't invent privacy for everyone. It just made the gap between who had it and who didn't much sharper.
Locks tell the same story.
Simple pin tumbler locks existed in various forms for thousands of years, but locking a door specifically to be alone, rather than to protect property, is a much newer habit. For most of history, a lock kept thieves out. It wasn't yet a tool for keeping your own family out of a room while you were inside it.
Children's private bedrooms are newer still.
Well into the 20th century, it was completely ordinary for siblings, sometimes 3, 4, 5 of them, to share not just a room, but a single bed in working class and even middle class households across Europe and America. A child having their own room to close a door on was, within living memory, a mark of real privilege.
Even bathing stayed communal much longer than most people assume.
Public bathhouses in ancient Rome, medieval Europe, and Ottoman cities were social spaces where dozens of strangers washed side by side, gossiped, did business, and negotiated marriages. The idea of bathing as a solitary, sealed-off act only became the norm once indoor plumbing made private bathrooms affordable for ordinary homes.
Indoor plumbing itself is barely a century old for most of the world. Before it, going to the toilet often meant a shared outhouse, a communal privy, or a chamber pot emptied in front of whoever happened to be in the room. The bathroom door you lock without thinking twice is one of the newest small luxuries in human history.
It's worth pausing on how recent all of this really is.
Separate bedrooms, private bathrooms, personal diaries, locked doors used for solitude rather than security. Nearly all of it is younger than the printing press's widespread reach, let alone electricity. What feels like a basic human need to us was, for almost all of human history, simply unavailable.
And even now, privacy is nowhere near universal. Over 1 billion people today live in informal settlements and refugee camps, where entire families still share one room, one latrine, one thin wall between them and a stranger's entire life. Dormitory workers, prison populations, and people in overcrowded housing across the world still live something much closer to the old communal norm than to the private modern ideal. Even in wealthy countries, privacy tracks income more than most people admit. A shared studio apartment with 3 roommates, a hospital ward with curtains instead of walls, a shelter dormitory with rows of beds. These aren't relics of the past. They're the present
for people who can't afford the version of privacy that architecture made possible for everyone else.
So the next time you close a bedroom door or use a bathroom with a lock or write something down knowing no one else will ever read it, notice what you're actually doing. You're using an invention. A relatively young, unevenly distributed piece of technology built from corridors, confessionals, and centuries of architecture designed to let a person disappear from view.
For nearly the entire span of human existence, being alone wasn't a right you were owed. It was a physical impossibility, and later, a privilege you had to be able to afford. Privacy isn't human nature. It's a room somebody had to build first, and not everyone got one.